Before steam engines, railways, or global shipping schedules, two seasonal forces shaped life across Southeast Asia: wind over the sea, and water across the land. The monsoon helped sailors cross enormous distances. River mouths and sheltered harbors turned those journeys into networks of exchange. Far inland, at Angkor, canals, ponds, embankments, and reservoirs organized one of the largest urban landscapes of the pre-modern world. These are not separate stories. Together, they show how Southeast Asian societies converted demanding environments into systems of movement, power, learning, and everyday life. When we hear the word monsoon, rain usually comes to mind. For sailors, however, the monsoon was also a calendar. Across the Indian Ocean and Southeast Asian seas, prevailing winds broadly reverse direction with the seasons. Mariners learned when those winds could carry a vessel eastward, and when a later season could help bring it home. This did not make travel fast, safe, or automatic. Storms, reefs, currents, disease, and piracy still mattered. What seasonal knowledge offered was a measure of predictability. A voyage could be planned around a window of wind, even when the return journey lay months in the future. That delay changed the history of port cities. A crew arriving near the end of one sailing season might wait months for favorable winds. Ships needed repairs. Water, food, timber, rope, pilots, warehouses, and credit had to be found locally. Merchants met people speaking different languages and following different customs. Goods moved: ceramics, cloth, aromatic woods, resins, metals, and spices. But so did stories, religious ideas, artistic forms, shipbuilding skills, and navigational knowledge. The Malay Peninsula and the Indonesian archipelago stood at the junction of the Indian Ocean and the China Seas. The wind set the rhythm, human communities made the network work. From about the 7th century, a maritime power known as Srivijaya emerged around present-day Palembang in Sumatra. Its position near the Musi River and the Strait of Malacca placed it close to one of the great funnels of Asian trade. Ships traveling between India and China did not simply sail past an empty coastline. They entered a world of river ports, island passages, local rulers, pilots, markets, and alliances. Srivijaya prospered by participating in and influencing that world. It helped connect ports across Sumatra and the Malay Peninsula, while long-distance cargoes were collected, redistributed, taxed, exchanged, or carried onward. It is tempting to draw Srivijaya like a modern nation-state, with a hard line around its territory. That picture is misleading. Its influence changed over time and was held together through strategic centers, river systems, maritime routes, rulers, and alliances. Some places may have been controlled closely, others were linked more loosely. This is why responsible maps show zones and connections instead of falsely precise borders. The most revealing image is not a colored block of land. It is a constellation of ports. Gold, spices, ceramics, cloth, aromatic products, and forest goods moved through that constellation, giving political value to location and access. Srivijaya was not only a commercial power, it was also an important Buddhist center. The Chinese monk Yijing stopped there in the year 671 while traveling toward India. He described more than 1,000 monks and advised other Chinese pilgrims to study in Srivijaya before continuing west. His account is a reminder that maritime routes carried scholars as well as merchandise. A port could be a place to learn languages, copy texts, prepare for a longer journey, and join intellectual communities stretching across Asia. Commerce, belief, diplomacy, and education were not isolated lanes. They traveled through many of the same harbors. Srivijaya weakened over time. One famous shock came in 1025, when forces of the Chola dynasty from southern India launched naval raids against centers associated with Srivijaya. The attacks mattered, but no single date can explain the whole transformation of a changing maritime network. Political relationships shifted, new centers gained importance, and trade continued through routes larger than any one ruler. Centuries later, Malacca would become the name most people associate with the strait. Yet Srivijaya had already demonstrated an enduring regional model: power built through ports, passage, alliances, and the seasonal circulation of ships. Now travel inland, to Angkor in present-day Cambodia. Most photographs frame a temple tower. Archaeology and aerial mapping force us to zoom much farther out. Angkor was a vast, low-density urban landscape, monumental centers surrounded by roads, canals, embankments, occupation mounds, ponds, fields, and communities spread across the plain. Its scale is easier to understand from above, where individual monuments become nodes inside a much larger pattern. Water connected many parts of that pattern. It moved through channels, gathered in ponds and moats, and filled enormous rectangular reservoirs known as baray. The West Baray alone covers roughly 16 square kilometers. Across the wider landscape, channels extended for hundreds of kilometers. These works helped people live with a climate of intense wet seasons and long dry ones, but describing the whole system as a single giant irrigation machine would be too simple. Different features were built at different times and may have served different purposes. Water could support settlement and cultivation, shape movement, display royal capacity, and carry religious or cosmological meaning. Scholars continue to debate exactly how particular reservoirs and channels functioned. That uncertainty is not a weakness, it is evidence of a complex landscape that changed for centuries. Angkor did not simply vanish overnight. The word collapse can hide a longer and more complicated transformation. Climate stress, including severe swings between drought and intense rainfall, placed pressure on an enormous and continually modified water network. Infrastructure could be damaged or become harder to manage. Political centers and patterns of trade also changed. People moved, adapted, and continued living across the region. No single broken canal, failed harvest, battle, or year explains everything. The more accurate story is one of interacting pressures and urban change, an immense landscape being reorganized rather than a civilization suddenly disappearing. The monsoon did not create Srivijaya by itself, and reservoirs did not create Angkor by themselves. Sailors, pilots, shipbuilders, merchants, farmers, builders, religious communities, rulers, and generations of local knowledge turned wind and water into historical possibilities. One system connected seas. Another reshaped a plain. Both depended on maintenance, cooperation, authority, and constant adaptation. That is the larger history behind Southeast Asia's ports and temples, not people passively ruled by nature, but societies learning to move with seasonal forces and building worlds large enough to connect an ocean.